Hello, fellow patriots. Gene Valentino here. As we approach our 250th anniversary, let's celebrate the spirit that made this nation the greatest country on earth. I'm so proud to offer you our limited edition 1776 to 2026 commemorative hats, a bold reminder of freedom, faith, and the American dream. Whether you're at a rally or on a golf course or just showing your pride every day, this hat says it all. Grab yours today at genevalentino.com and let freedom ring.
I'm Jenny Beth Martin. This is the Jenny Beth Show. Joining us today is a former elected official, a serial entrepreneur, an aviator, and the host of the independent conservative broadcast, The Grassroots Truthcast. He's interviewed Tom Homan on border security. He has analyzed Trump's Iran strategy in real time. And today he is here to break it all down. Gene, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Jenny.
So tell the audience a little bit about yourself. What all have you done? And what are you doing right now? I know that you've got a podcast and you're an investor and you do real estate development, but let people know a little more about you.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm supposed to be retired, but it's not working. They say when you retire, it's when you're supposed to be having fun. I am having fun, but I don't need to be retired. I'm enjoying the things that we work so hard for during our life to do, except now I have the privilege of doing it more on my clock, my schedule, and in some sort of rhythm of things that's comfortable to me. I'm an adjunct professor as well at the local college, and I teach business economics and entrepreneurship for the younger crowd, what I affectionately refer to as the Gen Z folks who are finding themselves in this precarious world we live in today, something that might be a little different from what you and I have come from. The other thing I do is right on the other side of this wall right here, we have a little airplane hangar, and the Icon A5 seaplane is ready to go when I'm not doing Jenny Beth Martin shows. And it's nice to be able here on the Gulf Coast of Florida to jump in the plane and go 100, 200, 300 miles, have lunch somewhere, come back. And one of the other things we do is visit some of our real estate investments through my partner, and we go around and raise capital for our hotel projects we have primarily in the Southeast United States. I was a former United States congressional candidate. I ran for Matt Gaetz's seat. This is District 1, U.S. Congressional District number 1 here in the Panhandle of Florida. I'm talking to you from Pensacola, Florida, which is the central time zone, one of the few states that has two time zones. I lost in a Republican Party primary for U.S. Congress in this special election with 9 other Republicans running against me. This is when the seat was vacated by Matt Gaetz, when President Trump was considering Congressman Matt Gaetz for Pam Bondi's seat, potential attorney general. But prior to that, I was a 2-term county commissioner here in Escambia County, Florida. Had the privilege of serving 350,000 people in this district, in this county, and very proud of the accomplishments we did. My focus was economic development, trade, and that's what I enjoyed the most about the job.
Well, that is really good, and it also explains why you are investing and looking for places where you can help other communities around the country grow and have good trade. So your experience as a county commissioner, I'm sure, comes in very handy with that.
It does. In fact, when I was up in North Georgia, in your neck of the woods up there, I ended up meeting some of the staff that was in politics down here in the Panhandle, So when I was working with the mayor of Woodstock, Georgia, I come to find 2 or 3 people sitting in the room that I used to work with, which further enhanced our relationship with Woodstock.
Oh, very good. And the mayor of Woodstock is Michael Caldwell, and that's right here in the same county where our office is.
Wow.
No, tell me something before we get in. We're going to talk a bit about Iran today, but before we get into that, tell me more about this Icon A5 amphibious plane.
Yeah, the Icon A5 was something that it's not unique anymore, but it was 12, 14 years ago when it was in first design. It's a total fiberglass aircraft, not as much metal as you think, which makes it fall into the category, excuse me, of light sport aircraft. It's a 2-seater, fully certified aircraft, and it's a seaplane. And I'm here on on Perdido Bay in Florida, which is the border to Alabama, and so we just get it warmed up. My team pre-flights the plane with me, and we taxi it outside into the washdown area out there, and then down the ramp into the waters, and that's where we can take off and get anywhere. It's not a 400-mile-an-hour aircraft. It's about 105 miles an hour on a good day, but it's a lot of fun, and it gets me around rather quickly. I'm honored to be able to say that the Pensacola, which is where I am, is the home of the Blue Angels, and they're having their homecoming on the first weekend after July 4th each year, and I have been asked again for the fourth time to participate in the pre-show of the Blue Angels Air Show. It's a pretty significant event, and I'll be performing for a good 15, 20 minutes on the waters of Pensacola Beach in front of about 150,000 people with my Icon A5 and a guest. And we'll be doing touch and goes and semi-acrobatic moves in and around the Pensacola Beach Casino Beach Pier.
And when did you learn how to fly a plane?
Oh, I'm dating myself. 1974 in college.
Oh, wow.
It's been quite a few years, over 40 years of flying. Safety always first, and we had several planes in our history. But this is the one that's, I'll take a commercial airline if I need to go further. But this is my baby when I'm doing something under 500-mile radius. Scooting up to where you are would be a fun trip in the airplane, but that's probably the furthest out I would go. Just north of Atlanta, and in that radius, west towards Shreveport, Louisiana, and over towards Dallas, and the other direction down towards Tampa. A lot of fun, a lot of beautiful views along the Gulf of America.
Absolutely. Well, that sounds quite fascinating and really a lot of fun. And congratulations on being able to do the pre-show for the Blue Angels. That is quite an honor. And to get to do it right after America's, or as, I guess we should just say as America is celebrating 250 years. That's really exciting.
That's really exciting. The adrenaline's going to be pumping.
That is terrific. So I'm very proud of you for that. All right. So we are going to talk about Iran and what's going on there. And we're pre-recording this. So there may be a few things because the situation is so fluid that change just slightly by the time that we air this in a day or so from now. But tell me, what are your thoughts about Iran and where we are right now with the situation over there, the ceasefire, and what President Trump's objectives are?
Good question. You and I have been on other interviews as well. And, Jenny, I just when you think you've got Donald Trump figured out, another curveball comes flying at you. The man is a master at the deal, which is what he wrote his book on, and I commend him completely for that. Look, for 47 years, we've been abused by this Iranian nation of Islamic jihadists in particular that have killed Americans and people from other nations in the Arabia area and around the world. We never had a president in the United States since World War II that was willing to step up and be forthright in his decision making to take on an enemy that has been hurting us. I hope and pray that someday America wakes up, and it'll have to happen through Congress when they get back to work, and that they enact a monument for this man, honoring him somewhere on the wall of the Grand Canyon, the way they did Mount Rushmore. I was going to say, let him be the fifth character in Mount Rushmore. No, I'm now convinced he needs to stand apart with his own sculptured edifice sitting against the wall of a canyon somewhere in the United States, honoring him separately. He has he's made precedent. He's broken any standards of norm that other presidents will probably in the future yearn for. He wants peace. You know, for a guy who's got a lot of bluster, a lot of vim and vigor, a little bit loose at the mouth at times, I can't say I fault him. You know, it's not an etiquette class of protocol here in the States anymore. It's dealing the way you have to deal with the person who says they're going to kill you. And if you're going to talk about a person who's going to kill you, my nice manner doesn't hold squat. You've got to get down in the dirty and roll up your sleeves and deal with this person, an enemy, not placate them, not try to pay them off with pallets of cash like Obama did, and not all this acquiescing and giving in to their demands each and every time just to shut them up is an abuse. It sent the wrong message to the rest of the world that Donald Trump, that the United States, was weak and impotent ever since our win in World War II. I think he demonstrates and makes a lot of military soldiers happy with the leadership he's shown. And he is in you mentioned the timeline as per the day we're recording this. It's so dynamic. It's changing moment by moment. For a guy who was trying to eviscerate the country, there's a lot of military people and people with strong opinions like me that were a little disappointed when he took pause in this ceasefire and didn't finish the job. And I'm one of them. I wish he had, because it may have telegraphed temporarily, not only to the rest of the world, but to our stock market, that we were not able to handle the final results that was expected in Iran. Watch out. I submit to you that just when you're ready to watch your movie tonight or tomorrow night, something may happen and you'll be watching a news flash appear in the next 72 hours or so, 4 or 5 days out. You may see a change, a finishing of the job, as they say.
Yes. And recent McLaughlin polling shows that 6 in 10 Americans want to finish the job. And and the reason for that is, one, Iran can never have a nuclear weapon.
Yeah.
And two, if we don't finish the job right now, we may wind up, and we very likely will wind up back in Iran in a few months or years from now. We've already been there for 47 years. It's time to be done with this and to resolve the situation. And I understand what you're saying about being disappointed with the ceasefire. I also can imagine that when you're the president, you have to weigh a lot of a lot of information coming at you to make the decision that you think is best. I think in President Trump's heart of hearts, and I've said this before in the air, even though I don't know him personally, like I am not on Donald Trump's speed dial. I wish I were, but I'm not. But I would suspect that a man who builds buildings and does so much with construction just does not want to go and blow up bridges and blow up power plants, because he understands how devastating that will be to the people of the country when it comes time to rebuild. And I think he's probably going, okay, is there anything we can do to put that, not have to do that, and to get them to come to the table? And I think he's trying his best to give them the opportunity to do so. But we're also, while I say that, we're dealing with people who are still part of the regime, and their opinion and what they want to see happen to America. I'm not sure that they've had a total conversion on wanting Americans dead and America to be attacked. So we have to also understand we're dealing with that reality.
Yeah, that's a good point. Who wants America dead? Is it an Islamic regime, a culture within the country, a protocol within the country, or is it the average citizens? And what do the average citizens know or don't know? It might be we have to be sensitive of the fact that they've been indoctrinated with information that they've been given. That's not their fault, but they were given it, so they believe it to be true, to kill Americans and Israelis. But it may not. What they're being fed is not necessarily a truism. And I think we're going to find that as we string it out, they wanted to string it out because that's their only weapon they have left, only to realize that Donald Trump is turning the tables on them. He did so with the blockade, and he's doing so with information. These Iranian leaders can't keep women and children in front of power plants for 2 or 3 weeks straight. So I think he's making a strategic move to finish it off when they least expect it, saving innocent Iranian lives. And I think as a strategist, I would say that is likely. What I think is even more interesting is that the table is also being turned and showing, and the standard Iranian citizen is saying, well, wait a minute, they could have finished us off by now. Why didn't they? And what's going on that we don't have any communication? We're about to lose our water. The rial is worthless in Iran right now, and Trump's betting on total economic collapse as another weapon of war that doesn't need the military to enact. So what's happening is, I think there's different strings he's pulling in different ways. That's why J.D. Vance, as we're speaking, was just held up from jumping on the plane with his entourage to go back and work on the deal. It's alleged that finishing of the negotiations will occur by the end of this week, but we'll see. I hope so. I hope there's some reasoning amongst the negotiators. Word today is that the negotiators are comfortable with where they're moving on settlement with us, but it's the hardliner military side of the Iranian government that's not no, but hell no. And Trump's now got a little time not only to retool, but to excise a strategy that might go after the real wrongdoers the way Israel did with the pocket pagers not too long ago.
Yes, that is an interesting way to think about it. And I think that the because and we heard this from the White House this week that they thought they had a deal, and then the people they were negotiating with, there's, as you were just saying, the hardliners from the military are saying no, absolutely not, and they're trying to figure out who they have to negotiate with and who's going to be controlling the country. At the same time, we want to make sure that whoever does ultimately control the country, they're not going to terrorize their own citizens the way that
Oh,
that
yeah.
we've seen them do. And I know that's not one of the primary objectives. It's not why we're in there, and I'm not suggesting we need to be in there for decades at all. But I also, when we find out how many of their citizens were slaughtered just for exercising their ability to
Bingo.
speak,
Yeah.
I there's there's a human interests that we also wind up having to look at. So there are a lot of moving pieces in this. I think the president must examine. Let's go back and talk a bit more about the blockade and the Strait of Hormuz. What are you thinking when we're looking at that specifically?
Well, there's just so many parts to it. We've got about 200 tankers right now stranded. Insurance costs with those tankers is rising. This matters because it directly affects gas prices, inflation, and a lot of our supply chain networks. Remember, we don't need that. We don't need that oil. We're oil positive with what we're producing here in the United States now. And we've replenished our strategic oil reserves, which Biden used to help put a patch on the tire on our economy under his administration, leaving us in an oil deficit, which made prices go up even higher than we have now. The relationship has to be truly analyzed and compared in context. And to answer your question, I think this is going to be a surprise. My surprise today is that when I looked at the stock market before going on the air, what's the problem? We're up. Everything on my reports look green, and I don't see a collapse in the economy. I saw a little one when we first invaded or first attacked, but it's rebounded when all the paranoid folks in Wall Street realized the economy is still intact and our supply chain network was intact. To answer your question specifically, our refineries need a retrofit to handle the sweet oil, the sweet crude that's coming out of the earth in and around the United States. That means that the oil refinery process today of our own oil that we're producing gets shipped out, the sweet crude does, for refinement elsewhere, and then comes back at a markup, at a cost to be used. That increase in price would be saved if we further refine our own sweet crude here in the United States. That's on Trump's agenda. It's part of a economic incentive plan in supply chain economics that I keep referring to. So we haven't seen the negative impact yet because you think Iran's buying time. America's buying time. We're buying time because we're retrofitting existing oil refineries. And it's going to be more about our ability to pump through pipelines this oil supply we have, not just build it, Jenny. We need to make sure that we can push the oil through our pipes to all the regions of the country as fast as possible. Guess who refuses to do so? California. Everything they're taking comes in from other parts of the world with a markup built into the gas, the final product, the gasoline they're importing, with the markup because they refuse to refine in California, or take refined product in the United States. Ergo, an increase in price to the consumer. They'll realize sooner or later that has to change if they expect an economy in California to survive. If they just did that, you would see a bolstered economic environment in California, which would stave off the exodus they're having now.
Yeah, I think they care more about radical leftist ideology than they do about staving off that exodus. But if they're not careful, they're going to wind up with, like, they may already be like New York City, where they don't have enough people to pay the taxes because the taxes are so outrageous there now to be able to provide all of the free the free things that they've promised voters.
Yes.
Explain more about what sweet crude is. I'm not familiar with oil refinement that much.
Well, I'm not an expert on it either, but from an investor's point of view, there's just different levels of oil coming out of the ground. Some of it's real sludgy and dirty, which historically we've handled well. But there's a sweeter, almost golden, clearer fluid coming out of the Earth's core down there that is pure and more pure than some of the raw oil we pump, and that, I believe it or not, we are less capable of refining. So it needs to go out of the country to facilities that are doing that. And actually, it's the last step. It has to do with the stack temperature in the exhaust pipes coming out of the refinery, temperatures at different levels, the length of time it sits at those temperatures. It has an impact on how it converts into actual gasoline. And we're not as equipped to doing that. And I think that as we move in that direction, it'll just enhance our ability to be totally sustainable on our own without outside support. But frankly, it's the other uses of the oil that go to other products, the drug industry alone, the pharmaceuticals, the manufacture of other supplies and goods that are part of our bill of lading procedures and construction procedures within our manufacturing. But, we did it to ourselves. It was about 4 or 5 decades ago, we realized under, let's say, the Nixon administration with Mao Zedong, when he tried to build up a friendly relationship with China back in the early days. We did it through economic cooperation, and that cooperation was trade. And we realized that their conversion of dollars to their currency was a huge savings for us. Now, the unions here in the States had a pretty big stronghold on the economy, and their pricing was very high. So Mr. Employer, Mr. Businessman and business owner would turn around and look for a lower price to get the same product. And he did so by outsourcing outside the United States. So we became part of a global economy, a world economy. And so our supply chain network moved outside the United States. Well, it went too far. And as a consequence, all we had left were liberal teachers telling us how bad America is. And it's now coming home. It's now coming back. Donald Trump needs more time. I wish he could enjoy a third term. The magic is, I sense he's testing J.D. Vance now on the negotiations to see how he does as it pertains to him being an endorsed replacement for himself.
Well, that will be interesting to see how the vice president does.
Yes.
When you are talking about how he needs more time, he can't have a third term as much as we might wish that he could. What we do need to make sure of that is allowable and that we need to work very hard on is to ensure that conservatives maintain control of both the House and the Senate.
Yeah.
If that fails to happen, we will see impeachments and hearings, and it will be 2020 all over again. And that will be a disaster for our country. With that in mind, Virginia just voted to redistrict and to give Democrats a 10-1 advantage when it comes to the districting and the makeup of their congressional seats. What do you think that decision that the Virginia voters just gave and made, what kind of effect is that going to have as we go into the fall and more broadly just around the entire country?
I don't know what bothers me more, the antics of the Democrat Party getting this through and the money involved in pushing it through, or or whether it's ignorance of the voter himself, herself. I don't know what to get angry about, but it's so wrong. I used to be a county commissioner for 2 terms, and every 10 years we had a review of the census to determine what the boundaries would be for a given district. The concept we lived by under our county attorney, very, very good attorney, was a concept called coterminous. I'm so glad you brought this up. Coterminous, 1 man, 1 woman, 1 vote. It's what our democracy intended. It did not intend that the elected officials themselves get involved with a process of creating districts from within the elected person was campaigning and came out of. It did not suggest that district be gerrymandered with a funky boundary that lent itself towards one party more than the other. There's nothing in our Constitution or in our law that says that the boundary has to be based on a political party. It does. In fact, the opposite's true. When we set up our boundaries, it was to make sure that the population in one area was consistent with the population in the next area, in the next district, so that if I'm coming out of District 4, for example, and another guy's coming out of District 3, but we're serving the same county, that we have the same number of people voting. So in District 2, for example, where I came out of, there were 55,000 people. Make sure District 3 and District 1 and so forth have 55,000 people that were having the same number of voters coming out of every district, not making sure that within that district there were 90% Republicans or 90% Democrats. It didn't say that. It says make sure that there's an equal number of voters. Well, if you're silent on the mix between Democrat and Republican, you are by silence acknowledging a possibility that you could structure a district to favor one political party more than the other. That's what just happened in Virginia. Governor Youngkin, who preceded Governor Spanberger, didn't do that. He created a balance and equity amongst the districts. By the way, the Democrats are screaming about what happened in Texas. Oh, no, it was already gerrymandered in Texas. What was going on down in Texas was an attempt to bring it back into balance, not gerrymander it. And if you notice the ratios down there, 6 to 4, 6 to 5, they're almost split. It's based on the registration of Democrats and Republicans in that given area. They were trying to make it coterminous. And that's what they did not do in Virginia. They sold a bill of goods down the throats of the Virginian folks and said, it's okay. The district for the Congress seat, now I'm shifting from local government to federal, the congressional seat can have a 10-to-1 ratio of Democrats over Republican. Who do you think's getting elected in that district? So that goes against, Jenny, the spirit of our two-party system. We didn't have two parties to dominate the world of our government. We had two parties created by our forefathers to create an alternative opinion. So if you're a Democrat, and I'm not holding you to that, but if you're a Democrat and I'm a Republican, maybe I'm wrong on something. I need to hear your opinion and be corrected so that the end result in Congress or in the legislative branch we're working. Here's a different point of view for what? The greater good of the people, not the greater good of themselves, not protection for their job for another 40 years. So if you go to my website where I have my podcasts, I also have an area of Gene's recommended 28th Amendment to the Constitution. And the 28th Amendment to the Constitution of my country is an amendment that talks about a balance or an equity in the voting process, the system of how you become a citizen, and the way and the penalties. There's 27 amendments of the Constitution, Jenny. Not one of them deals with penalties against the legislative branch of government that promotes wrong. If you're using your position in Congress to advantage yourself at the expense of the many, where is the penalty? They've got all sorts of immunities in place for themselves. I want to know who penalizes these people. Who's penalizing them right now for the delay on the SAVE Act? Who's penalizing them for all these budget reconciliation and no final budget? No congressman or senator should be paid a dime until that budget is reconciled and balanced and adopted, as an example.
Yeah. It would be amazing if that would happen. And balancing the budget it's just not. It's not on their horizon at all, even though it needs to be done because the government spending, the out of control spending leads to inflation. The debt becomes a security risk for the country because it's such a massive amount of debt. And it's just a dangerous situation, but there is no accountability. And there are not people in the lobbyist class who are advocating for a balanced budget, advocating for less spending. Usually they actually advocate for more spending, advocating for the Save America Act, advocating for the things that the citizens actually want. And I think that it makes our job much more difficult, but it also just shows our job is very, very important because if it isn't for groups like Tea Party Patriots, for podcasters like you, to be standing up and saying, we are calling for a balanced budget. We are calling for government to be more responsible with our dollars. We are calling for the government to weed out waste, fraud, and abuse. There's no accountability.
That's right.
At least right now, there's a little oversight from the voters.
It was never intended that, in fact, I have the book, if I can find it. Got it here. Yeah, here it is. A conservative person by the name of Scott Walter. He wrote the book Arabella. Arabella is a book he gave me last year, The Dark Money Network of the Leftist Billionaires Secretly Transforming America. It goes on to talk about Bill Gates, George Soros, Mark Zuckerberg, The sheer quantity of money that has flowed through Arabella's channels is staggering. In the 2020 election cycle, Arabella's nonprofits took in $2.4 billion, more than the fundraising of the Democrat and Republican national committees combined. In the 2022 election cycle, Arabella's fundraising rose to $3 billion. It goes on. It's not unrelated to what you said a minute ago. The Virginia vote was funded by NGOs, non-government organizations. The NGOs obsessively funded campaigns and advertising and marketing to convince the citizen, just go out and vote yes for this. And the people didn't know what they were voting on. And as a result, they hurt themselves. We need a constitutional amendment that denies this kind of money being used in the election process. It's an extension of the graft and the fraud and the abuse of the election process that's plagued us in the news media for the last decade, but more specifically the last 4 years. It's been just an abuse of the system, and people who have been in office like Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Jerry Nadler, or puppets like Eric Swalwell, who've been in term less, but being used by these people, are taking NGO monies to fund corrupt personal initiatives that promote their own interests at your expense and mine. That's where I hope our nation goes in the years ahead. After Donald Trump, he set the stage. He certainly opened Pandora's box with the help of Elon Musk and the Doge initiative to uncover this waste, fraud, and abuse. And I submit to you, I think there will be an uprising from America, which the Constitution allows, if this Congress doesn't get their act in place. I don't want to hear about another congressman talk about what Donald Trump's doing in Iran if they don't have the time, if they're out on a vacation while his team's working 24/7. They need to get back to the job, get to work, balance a budget, and put America's priorities first, not worrying about the next impeachment of Donald Trump.
Yes, that is exactly right. And, when you're talking about the funding of the groups on the left and the NGOs and non-government organizations, we also this week have breaking news that the Southern Poverty Law Center they took the donations that they were receiving and went and paid to prop up white supremacist groups so they could complain about racism in America when they were funding it, allegedly. So it's a real issue when they're actually actively working against America, like what we have seen allegedly from the Southern Poverty Law Center.
And the same thing happened just a few weeks earlier, figuratively, with Black Lives Matter being funded by similar types of NGOs. And now you have indictments on looming against some of the principals that were using the money for self-purpose and not for the greater good of the discriminated black folks and other minorities.
We also saw this week that Congresswoman Sheila Sherfilis, I may be pronouncing her name there wrong, McCormick just resigned because she allegedly has taken COVID relief money and took too much money and committed fraud from that. Apparently,
allegedly,
allegedly.
It hasn't. I'd like to see how that turns out. That's South Florida or mid Florida down near Hialeah. I don't know what it is that's going on, but there seems to be an acknowledgement amongst the political circles that there was license to be able to go forward in this fashion, abusing America's money. And just think, what they hate about Donald Trump is that within the executive authority, he uses the tariffs to manage the funding of all these things that he otherwise can't get Congress to meet to vote on through a budget process to get the funds from normally. He has to go out and do it outside the scope of the budget reconciliation procedure through his administrative use of a tariff to accomplish what we Americans are trying to accomplish. It's obscene. It's not right that this has to happen. I'm just wondering, when are the American people going to rise up and do something about giving their own congressman or woman a good spanking and to get back to work, to get a balanced budget, install term limits, balanced budget, policy on the border, a whole new immigration system? What are they picking on ICE for? It's the only thing left that's helping Donald Trump get these 20 million illegals out of the country.
Yeah. And the Democrats, they don't want that to happen at all. They need those people in the country to affect redistricting, to affect
bingo.
First and foremost, it affects redistricting. So there's an immediate benefit for them. And then beyond that, they hope they'll become Democrat voters, and they don't want to pass the Save America Act. So they're okay if they wind up on the voter rolls and wind up casting ballots.
Yeah.
It is the incentives are completely backwards. I want to go back to the congresswoman who allegedly mishandled COVID funds. And I am sensitive to that. I understand we have to be careful. People can be accused of crimes, and we're talking about it and commentating on it. But we also have we have the rule of law, and we have real trials in this country, and we have to be sensitive to that when it comes to trials of public opinion versus trials in a courtroom. What I heard is that she received a check that was supposed to be for $50,000, and a decimal was off, and wound up getting a check for $5 million. So when I heard that, my first thought wasn't how she got such a check and might have used the funds. My first thought was, how many other checks like that went out? How many other checks were wrong? And that is something that in the drama of her situation, I think we're not hearing enough about. And yet, if Doge and Elon Musk were still able to do everything he was trying to do to clean up waste, fraud, and abuse, and there's still cleanup of waste, fraud, and abuse going on, even though Elon Musk is back to running his other enterprises. Those are the kind of things we need to root out, whether it's in a state government, because that check may have come from a state government, but the funds were coming from the federal COVID relief funds that went through the state to her, or whether it's from the federal government. We need waste, fraud, abuse, and also just human error or computer error that creates problems like this. It needs to be cleaned up. That is so much money to have kind of the decimal wrong. And also, my dad told me a story growing up. My whole life, I heard this story about how he went with his dad and one of his brothers one time, and they went on a trip. And while they were at a gas station, the clerk gave my grandfather a dime, 10 cents, too much money for change. And my grandfather counted it out, and he said, "Sir, you gave me too much money. You gave me a dime too much. Let me give that back to you." Because that's the right thing to do. When you're keeping something that's not yours and you know it's not yours, that's wrong. It's stealing. It's at the very least lies of omission. And later, years later, my family and I were in Chicago on a vacation, and my dad got a $10 bill back in change that was too much. And he told the person who gave it to him, "You gave me too much." And they were just all shocked. "Well, I gave that person $10 too much. Can you believe that?" And he gave it back. They were shocked that he would give it back. But the fact is, if it doesn't belong to you, you give it back. And if she actually got a check that was the wrong amount of money from the government, she should have given it back to the government. It belongs to the taxpayers.
Yeah, she's been accused of disguising the origin of the funds through financial transactions. The prosecutors are now alleging that money from Federal Emergency Management, FEMA, intended for COVID-related services was improperly kept by her family's health care company. I mean, there's a ton of accusations she's now having to face. This month during this interview with you, she's resigned from Congress, but she's not out of the woods, Jenny. She's got some serious criminal and ethics allegations she's going to have to face. She pleaded not guilty, but she's going to have to defend them in a court of law. My problem also is I hope the system moves expeditiously, and justice delayed is justice sometimes denied. And we need to make sure that we move the judiciary along, the whole judicial process and the prosecution as well. Sometimes, the deep state folks are sweeping stuff under the rug, hoping you and I forget about it, and that it's overshadowed by current events that come along the way. There's all kinds of House Ethics Committee disappearance of records that occurred. The special investigation, they were trying to go after Trump about the Hunter Biden laptop with the signatures from 50 officials in government. One of them, former CIA Director John Brennan. What happened? What's going on with the accusations and charges against him? Not one criminal prosecution against what I will refer to as Biden administration conspiracists that have tried to take down Trump. Now, one prosecution has come forward to go after the wrongdoing. We're stuck with a review of the FISA rules right now in Congress. But when will justice be served against all the people that have done wrong against not only Donald Trump personally, not to mention his family, but to this nation?
Well, I think that that's something that we continue to wait on. And it alarms me that we hear from Democrats that if they're reelected and they gain control of the White House again, they just want to double down and come after conservatives and Trump supporters. It's just not how our country is supposed to be operated. And
Right.
and I try, and I'm only human, so I will either make mistakes or just get it wrong sometimes. But I try to be intellectually honest, even with this congresswoman. I'm acknowledging that it's alleged. I'm saying that she deserves her fair time to defend herself, and we have presumption of innocence in this country, and I do understand that. There are people on the other side of the aisle who just want to weaponize the government, come after their political opposition, and do everything that they can to absolutely, utterly, and completely destroy the opposition so that they can hold on to power. And that's a lot of what we've been talking about today. And I think that's also why they're not giving President Trump a fair shake in explaining what's happening in Iran and helping explain that, like, the media doesn't give him a fair shake. And it's not their job to carry the water for him, but it would be the right thing to do, especially when we're dealing with foreign adversaries and foreign enemies who wish to seek us dead, that they give the president a fair shake.
I listened to you explain it that way, and I'm reminded that there must be a deep state with actors, starting with the likes of a George Soros and others, who push a socialistic or Marxist initiative, which is a form of communism, and that there is this Khrushchev idea goes back to the days of Russia when uh, even Khrushchev said, sell America the ropes so they can hang themselves. And I think America needs to wake up and be responsible. And the difference between America on this glorious day of 2026, where we're celebrating the 250th anniversary of this nation, it didn't succeed and stay in existence so long because we always got it right. It succeeded because we had remedies in place when we got it wrong. And I'm concerned that certain things that are going wrong right now are not being cured in a court of law or otherwise. The people need to step up and take back their nation. Look at this Constitution and understand what it was designed to do. We have amendments to the Constitution that allow this beautiful document to be modified. I reserve using the word changed, modified to reflect the current status of thing. Our founding fathers didn't know about the internet. They didn't know about high-speed rail. They couldn't fathom a spacecraft going around the backside of the moon, as we recently witnessed. And so we must have a document that's elastic enough for change going forward. And that's what we must install if Congress won't. We must penalize the actors in government that have been working behind the scenes at cross purposes to hurt this nation. And I think a lot of I'm counting on Gen Z, Jenny. I think they're the new generation of folks that has to step up and do what, let's face it, you and I have not done not individually, but I mean, as a generation, we need to step up and do what the likes of a Ted Cruz is trying to do, the likes of a Senator Rick Scott. I could name 6 more, Tom Cotton, a bunch of others that are great guys and gals in the House and in the Senate that are doing their best to remedy the shortcomings of this nation. We're going to be around another 250 years because the system will not allow itself to fail. My concern today is we're in for a little bit more of a bruising with 20 million people that illegally came into this nation, many of them the criminals and ilk from other nations that Joe Biden allowed in, are in your neighborhood and mine, sleeper cells that might evidence themselves in the future when we least expect it. That's what's concerning me today. We step up and cure this nation. We're doing it. Look at what Donald Trump is doing in his world. He's doing it overseas because he can, and everyone knows Congress can't stop him. But just think if he applied the same skill at helping us fix the Constitution and the Congress and the judiciary. A judiciary, can you believe that one person in particular cannot define what the difference between a man and a woman is so beyond my comprehension. It lends itself to a culture of what we've become that must be changed. Even our European allies haven't stepped up recently to be at our side when we were at theirs. We didn't need NATO, and we didn't need any unions in Europe and further east to be in existence for America's benevolence to be seen. We're doing it with Ukraine, and they're not in NATO. So we've got a mixed bag of bad behavior out there that needs to be rectified. Donald Trump did it overseas, and he's showing his successes. The question is, who will the next president be to continue the remedies needed within the governance of the United States of America to protect this nation and to allow it to perpetuate itself?
And that is where, as you said, we each as individual activists need to step up and do what we can to preserve this country and to make sure that when we are electing the next people, whether it is this fall for the House and Senate and other state and local races around the entire country, or in 2028, as we look at who will be the next president and vice president of our country, we are engaged and working to elect people who love the Constitution, cherish liberty, and want to ensure that we have a debt-free future. Gene Valentino, thank you so much for joining me today.
What a pleasure. I look forward to doing it again. Thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. It really helps us reach more people who care about liberty and the Constitution. You can find this and other episodes at jennybethshow.com, as well as Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, X, and your favorite podcast platform.
The Jenny Beth Show is hosted by Jenny Beth Martin. The Jenny Beth Show is a production of Tea Party Patriots Action. For more information, visit teapartypatriots.org.
Hello, fellow patriots. Gene Valentino here. As we approach our 250th anniversary, let's celebrate the spirit that made this nation the greatest country on earth. I'm so proud to offer you our limited edition 1776 to 2026 commemorative hats, a bold reminder of freedom, faith, and the American dream. Whether you're at a rally or on a golf course or just showing your pride every day, this hat says it all. Grab yours today at genevalentino.com and let freedom ring.